Well, hello there. Welcome to this episode of the Terri Cole Show. I'm so happy to see your face. I've been getting lots of letters from you guys about dating that I've been asking you what you want me to do episodes on, and you're telling me. So, you would like to know about red and green flags when it comes to modern dating. And I am delivering that in today's episode. So, before we get into it, if you happen to be new to this YouTube channel, hello and welcome. I'm happy you're here. Please introduce yourself in the comments. We are a friendly group. Also, make sure that you hit the subscribe button. I'll wait. Thank you. And hit the notification bell as well. I'll wait. Thank you. Because that will let you know every time I roll out something new, which is every Tuesday and every Thursday. And since I make it for you, I wouldn't want you to miss it. Now, would I? I would not. All right, let's move it on into today's content. Now, I am going to cover green flags as well, because I don't want this to just be like a bummer, like everything is so bad. It's not, but it really does help to go into the dating scene and the dating situation with an idea of what you're looking for and with what doesn't work for you. Because what it can do is it can save you time from dating people who are just not compatible with what it is that you want. So I feel like modern dating has changed a lot, right? Think about how much dating has changed in the last 30 years. But human beings have not. And human nature has not. So yes, we're dealing with red and green flags, but these would probably be the same red and green flags we'd have 30 years ago. They would just be delivered differently, right? Because it wouldn't be texting that you were trying to decode. It would be someone in person. But there's still things to look out for. So let's start with the red flags. I think that it is a red flag if someone doesn't keep their word, right? Someone's word and their actions being aligned is important. And if it's not aligned, you really have to look at what their behavior is as opposed to what their words are. And that it's very tempting. And I fell into this when I was in my 20s as well, to be like, oh, well, they said this. I'm like, okay, but what did they do, right? They said that, but what is their actions telling you? So I always believe actions, and I think that it's important, right? If someone says, I'm going to call you on Friday, and they don't call you on Friday, and then they call you on Monday being like, what's up? That was your weekend. It's on you to say, oh, I figured when you didn't call, you just got caught up. I had a great weekend. I hope you did too, or whatever. But those are things that we don't necessarily want to let slide. Another red flag, and this is just me, but being sexual too soon, I feel like complicates the shit out of relationships. Maybe it's an unpopular opinion. I don't know. Maybe I'm just old school, and I'm not. I'm not a prude. I'm not anti-sex. I just feel like it complicates getting to know someone once you have a sexual ulterior motive. And if somebody wants to start sexting with you, like texting sexual shit that you barely know, I don't know. I feel like it's depersonalizing, right? Unless you legit are into it and want to do it, and that's okay too. If someone is doing this very early or insisting even after you've sort of begged off on it, that's something you have to really pay attention to, because it tells you something about what their motivation is. Another red flag is someone who runs hot and cold, especially in the communication department, right? Sometimes they're all in with communicating, so being bombarded by text throughout the day, calling, and then sometimes they disappear. This speaks to some kind of ambivalence on their part. So again, if they're hot and heavy and then sort of move away, that's a communication style that, to me, speaks to some kind of intimacy issues. I'm not exactly sure what, but what we want to be looking for is consistency. Another red flag is to pay attention to how your person you're dating is interacting with the rest of the world. Yes, how they're interacting with you, for sure, but it's very revealing how someone treats a cab driver, a waitress, a cashier, right? If their tone is condescending or dismissive, this tells you so much about who they are as a person, and probably so much about how they will eventually treat you. Number 5, red flag. Look out for people who are loving to blame all the other people, right? Telling you all the things. They're dissatisfied, but it's not their fault. It's someone else's fault. It's their boss. It's their parents. Pay attention to someone who talks badly about their ex or their exes. Everyone's crazy. Everyone was nuts, right? And listen, I am not anti talking about past relationships, right? I feel like this is, this is normal. But I want you to pay attention to the way they talk about it. And if every one of their exes is a crazy bitch, quote unquote, that's a red flag, right? Because that's someone who's not taking responsibility for their own life. But also, is it possible that it's everyone else and not them? I'm going to say no. It's from a human nature point of view, it's really not possible. Okay, number 6 of the red flags. If they are a crappy listener, right? Are they really listening to what you're saying? Or do they consistently seem to be looking for ways to like jump into the conversation, to sort of take over the conversation, to bring it back to them? It could be a wait to talker, right? Like I just described. Someone who instead of listening, they're sort of listening for the opportunity to just insert their thoughts, but they're not really reflecting back on what you've said, right? Or someone who does a lot of bragging to impress you, right, with their specialness. But if I really pay attention, if someone doesn't ask any questions about you, that is really important. Or they ask a question, but they don't listen for the answer. They ask you a question, you start to, and then they bring it back to them. So it's uncomfortable and it doesn't feel good. Like someone doing that, it feels that's very dehumanizing. Take note. And listen, sometimes if it's a first date, sometimes people are like this because they're nervous, right? So, okay, we'll if you liked other things about them and maybe they're just nervous, okay. So maybe go on a second date with them, right? Maybe they'd be a better listener on a second date. We don't want to have this be the only thing you hold against them. But it is, again, all of these things are things to be mindful of. Number 7 on the to look out for list. Someone who is really secretive. I see that as a red flag. I'm not talking about, no one has to tell you their deepest, darkest secrets on date number 1. But over time, this is what we're doing when we're dating, is getting to know someone. So if they're only ever talking about superficial stuff, or you feel like there's a lot in their life that they're intentionally omitting, that is a red flag. I dated someone many years ago at the height of my dating unavailable people who I never went to their apartment. I never met any of their friends. And then eventually one of my clients, when I was a talent agent, was like, "Hi, are you still dating so-and-so?" I said, "Yes, why?" And they said, "Because I saw them at a house party in Brooklyn last night making out with someone else." Oh, that was super fun, you guys. So anyway, that secretiveness, at least in that experience, there was more. He wasn't just hiding his small, crappy apartment. He was hiding other relationships and many other things. So being private is different than being like secretive and sneaky. So someone who's a very closed book, I'm very suspicious of why. All right, number 8, someone who tells you too much too soon, right? So a new person you're dating does spill their deepest, darkest childhood traumas, intimate details of their custody battle or their current lawsuit against their employer. To me, this is also a red flag because there's boundary issues in all of that oversharing. Now, again, healthy vulnerability and healthy sharing, this is information that we share. It's like a process and it happens over time. When someone is showing that they are emotionally safe, right? And you are showing you are emotionally safe, right? You're trustworthy. And sharing like this, sort of that dumping, trauma dumping kind of sharing, it can really be a bid for intimacy, a desire for that. But it's a dysfunctional way of going about it. Now let's talk about green flags. Green flags, what to look for and what to look forward to. Someone who does what they say they're going to do. When they say they'll call on Tuesday, your phone rings on Tuesday. When they suggest that you meet at 7, they show up at 6:55, right? Their words and their actions are aligned because they understand that reliability builds trust and trust builds connection. And maybe that's not even why they do it. Some people are just wired that way. Consistent. If my husband says he's going to do something, he's going to do it. I believe that he will. If he says he's going to pick me up, he will be there, right? It's like It's a green flag when you can count on someone to do what they say they're going to do. Another green flag is that they communicate clearly and consistently, right? No games, no mixed signals, no disappearing acts. They text you back in a reasonable time frame, right? They're upfront about their availability. They don't leave you guessing where you stand, right? You never have to decode their messages or wonder what they really meant. That's someone who knows how to communicate, but has the courage to be a direct communicator. Someone who is genuinely curious about you. This is a green flag. Genuine curiosity. They ask follow-up questions to your story that you're telling them. They remember details from a previous conversation that you've had, right? They want to understand your perspective, not just wait for their turn to talk, right? And you can feel the difference between someone who's interested and someone who's just being polite, right? Someone who's just sort of being like, oh, interesting. A real conversation happens with those follow-up questions on both ends. Another green flag is that they treat other people with respect and not just you. Yes, you, of course, but not just you. One of the most endearing qualities of my husband, and he has many, is that he treats everyone with respect. And I love that about him so much. It doesn't matter whether it's the toll booth operator. Thank you, sir. He always says, I really love that about him. It says so much about who he is as a person. So someone you want to pay attention to when someone is kind to the server, patient with the Uber driver, right? Considerate to your friends. How someone treats people who can't do anything for them. Think about that. How does the person you're dating treat people who cannot do anything for them? That speaks to the character of who they actually are. And it's important. Next green flag, they take responsibility for their choices. Right? When they talk about past relationships or challenges, they can acknowledge their own role without being overly self-critical, like I'm terrible or I'm an idiot or I'm a moron. They've learned from their experiences rather than just collecting grievances, which is what the other one, someone who's constantly complaining about others and blaming, is just gathering these grievances against other people. But where is the responsibility? So I love someone who takes responsibility for themselves. Another green flag, they respect your boundaries without making it weird. I didn't know how to say that better, but when you say you prefer a phone call over texting, they call. When you mention you're not ready for something or that you don't want to be sexual right now, they're not pouting or trying to convince you or coercing you, right? They understand that boundaries aren't rejection, that you are giving them information about you, and hopefully you are respecting their boundaries in turn. But it's so important because I feel like there's this old version, at least of heterosexual relationships, where somebody is trying to convince you to have sex even though you've said no and you don't want to. There could be a whole process of someone trying to convince you. And that is coercion. It is not cool. So let's not normalize it. No means no. And you've got to know that for you, whatever your boundary is, Another green flag is someone who shares appropriately over time. So they're not necessarily a fully open book on the first date, meaning they're not dumping stuff on the first date, but they're not a locked vault either, right? We find that middle of being able to share, right? They understand that intimacy develops gradually through consistent reciprocal sharing, because that is actually how real intimacy is built. There is no insta intimacy. It doesn't exist. Another green flag, someone who's excited about your success. When good things happen for you, they celebrate rather than compete, right? They don't diminish your wins or make your achievements about them. And it's funny, before I got together with my husband many years ago, I said I wanted someone who had their own show, their own life, their own big, and when I said show, I just mean something they loved and were passionate about and successful at, so that they wouldn't be threatened by me and my show and my ambition and what I wanted to do in life. I wanted someone who, when it was their turn, right, when I go into a show of my husband's work in New York City, or when I go to the Pentagon, wherever he's doing whatever he's doing, he's giving a speech, I'm so proud and excited to be in the front row. And when I'm there, I'm just his wife. You know what I mean? I'm happily his wife and his number one fan, and vice versa. Before my husband, I didn't experience that in my relationships. I felt like I had to make myself smaller to make other people comfortable. And I just couldn't do it forever. It just doesn't work, you know? So this kind of goes along with another red flag, that they have their own life and their own interest. They're not looking for you to quote unquote complete them, right? They want you to complement a life they're already living. They have friends, they have hobbies, they have goals, they have passions that don't necessarily revolve around you. At least that's what I was looking for. That might not be what you're looking for, but I feel like that's healthy. Another important green flag is that they can handle conflict respectfully, right? When disagreements come up, and they will, if you're really dating someone, of course they will, they stay curious rather than defensive. They can say, I was wrong. They can say, I'm sorry. You too, of course. They know how to fight fair. And that is really important. And listen, the green flags that I've talked about, they may not give you sort of the same kind of butterflies that drama and uncertainty does, but they are what is sustainable. This is healthy love actually looks like sustainability, consistency, right? And once you experience this kind of consistent, respectful, sort of honorable, the old relationship chaos, if that's what you were used to in the past, will feel exhausting rather than exciting. Trust me. And you can shift basically everything that we're talking about today in this episode. And I put it for you in a guide. You can go to terricole.com/guide to get it. Is ways of creating more stability within yourself, which makes you be able to have more stability in a relationship. Every one of those things. Their internal boundaries, their external boundaries, their preferences, their things to be aware of. But if you really do that, you can also, another thing that I'm giving you in the guide is these are things for you to think about after spending time with that person. You're dating someone. I want you to ask yourself these questions afterwards. How do you feel after spending time with them? Do you feel energized or you feel drained? Do you feel like you can be yourself, or are you performing? Are you excited to introduce them to people you care about, or are they more of a secret? Do they make your life better, or do they make your life more complicated? So those are going to be the questions I'll include in the guide. This is a green flag radar, basically, for you to be able to just quickly ask yourself, after spending time with people that you're dating, how do you feel about those things? Because I want you to trust your gut. When someone is generally good for you, your nervous system will know, right? We usually don't take the time to ask ourselves, how do we feel after dating? So I want to know from you, were these red and green flags helpful to you? Are you going to go download the guide, terricole.com/guide? I hope that you do. I want to hear from you, though. What has your dating experience been? And will you use these green flags, hopefully, to get into a better relationship? Let me know your thoughts wherever you listen to the show. I hope you guys have the most amazing week. It was fun spending time with you, as it always is. And as always, take care of you.